Wait, did Marvel really just pull the plug on one of its biggest upcoming movies? Before you scroll away or click to the next video, I want you to hold on, because what you're about to hear isn't just another recycled rumor or a wild theory floating around online. This goes way deeper. There's something Marvel doesn't want you to know, something they've been hiding behind closed doors until now. And if you're here, watching this, you're probably one of the thousands, maybe millions, who felt that same jolt across social media, asking the same question: what's going on with Marvel? Is a major movie really canceled? And if so, why? I'm glad you're here, because you've come to the right place, not just to get the truth, but to understand what's really happening behind the flashy headlines and the smokescreen announcements. And I promise you this, you're going to get your answer. But more than that, you're going to see what they didn't want fans like us to see. You'll understand why this news has been locked behind layers of silence, and why now, suddenly, that silence is cracking. I know why you clicked this video. And I also know that what keeps people watching isn't just breaking news, it's truth. Real, unfiltered, mind-bending truth that changes the way you look at everything. That's what this is. That's what's coming. But here's the thing. Before we rip into this, I want you to feel something deeper than just curiosity. I want you to feel the pulse of this story the way I felt it when I first started pulling the pieces together. Because this isn't just about a film being scrapped. It's about a domino effect inside Marvel Studios that no one saw coming. We've all grown up with this cinematic universe. Some of us remember sitting in a dark theater as Iron Man flew onto the screen for the first time. Others joined the ride somewhere along the way, cheering for Avengers and waiting with our hearts racing as post-credit scenes teased the future. These movies, for so many of us, aren't just entertainment. They're a part of our culture, our memories, even our identities. And now, one of those future promises might be broken. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever waited for a movie so badly you literally counted the days, checked updates every week, and even defended it online against critics before it ever came out? Have you ever had that kind of passion for a story that hasn't even unfolded yet? If you have, then I know exactly how you feel. Because that's what this movie was. It was supposed to redefine everything in Phase 6. It was supposed to bring a character we'd only seen in passing into the main spotlight. And now, the trail is going cold. Or so they want us to think. Stay with me. There's something you're going to want to see: a pattern hidden between press releases, casting rumors, and sudden production delays. Once you spot it, you'll never unsee it. That's why I need you to watch till the end, because every minute reveals a new layer of what's really going on. Marvel might not be saying much publicly, but their moves, if you read them right, are loud and clear. And no, this isn't one of those typical, "oh no, production delayed" situations. This is something different. This is Marvel trying to erase something before it even gets off the ground. Now, let me take you inside the timeline, piece by piece. I'll walk you through the casting controversies they thought would blow over. I'll show you the official documents filed under public records that quietly changed in the last 60 days. You'll see the posts that mysteriously vanished from social media. And most importantly, I'll tell you about the insider whispers, the kind that don't make it into Variety or Deadline until it's way too late. Because I don't work for Marvel. I'm not sponsored. I'm one of you. And that gives me the freedom to say what others won't. There's a story here, buried beneath the headlines, and it starts not with a director, not with an actor, but with a sudden shift in Marvel's internal strategy meetings that happened after the disappointing reception of certain Phase 5 titles. Executives weren't just looking at box office numbers. They were looking at audience trust. And what they saw scared them. They started realizing that fan fatigue was real, that the multiverse wasn't exciting everyone anymore, that if they didn't tighten the ship now, Marvel might go the way of Star Wars post-trilogy confusion. And when that conversation started, this movie became a casualty. But why this movie? Here's the twist. It wasn't the budget. It wasn't the cast. It wasn't even creative differences, at first. It was something else. Something political. Behind the scenes, clashes between departments. One high-ranking executive wanted this movie to reshape the MCU's future. Another wanted it buried because it clashed with a different franchise arc. Suddenly, boardroom politics got messier than any fight scene we've seen on screen. Characters were rewritten, scripts revised mid-production, concept art destroyed. And just like that, the countdown to cancellation began. Still watching? Good. Because here's where it gets real. You're going to hear names. Some you know, some you don't. You're going to see screenshots and leaked footage that were never meant to surface. You're going to hear from crew members who risked their endas because they believe the fans deserve to know what was stolen from them. This isn't clickbait. It's the kind of revelation that might make you rewatch recent Marvel trailers with fresh eyes, searching for clues. Because the seeds of this cancellation were planted months ago, and they were hidden in plain sight. Let's talk about the actor who was quietly dropped, even though he'd been training for the role for nearly a year. Let's talk about the production sets that were built overseas, fully finished, and then suddenly abandoned. Let's talk about the cryptic tweet from a Marvel concept artist that was deleted within minutes, but not before fans screenshotted it. Let's talk about why this particular project, one that could have introduced a fan-favorite anti-hero into the live-action universe, was deemed too controversial, too risky, too far outside the Marvel formula. But the biggest question is this: what are they going to do now? Marvel's got a problem. The fans are asking questions. Content creators are digging deeper. Hashtags are trending. Marvel Cancelgate. Bring it back. What happened to? And that's why they're scrambling to distract you with announcements, new trailers, soft reboots. But underneath it all, the silence about this movie is deafening. And when fans ask about it, they're met with vague answers. PR spin. Deflections. It's like the movie never existed, but we know better. Because if you've ever been emotionally invested in this universe, you felt the disturbance. You saw the shift in tone. You noticed when a highly anticipated slate just disappeared from Marvel's own website without explanation. And tonight, you're going to find out what really happened. Because in this story, the villains aren't wearing capes. They're sitting in executive chairs. And the heroes? Well, maybe it's us. So before we go any further, let me ask you this. What if I told you the cancellation was just the beginning? That something bigger is at play here? Something that threatens to upend the entire Marvel roadmap moving forward? What if this movie was the keystone holding together an arc they now regret creating? And what if it was never truly cancelled, but locked away for reasons far more disturbing than anyone imagined? Stay with me, because what comes next changes everything. Something was off from the very beginning, And no matter how deep Marvel Studios tried to bury it beneath red carpets and teaser trailers, the cracks were showing and they were widening. After that first subtle removal from their official release schedule, fan speculation turned into a digital wildfire. Reddit threads multiplied by the hour. Twitter, or X as some now call it, was ablaze with hashtags like cancelled Marvel movie, Miku Chaos, and the more cryptic facetious shadow ban. But underneath the noise, there were whispers, scattered bits of intel coming from anonymous production assistants, low-tier VFX artists, and people who claimed to have stepped foot on the set before it all went dark. They spoke of odd instructions from upper management, of storyboards being shredded in front of entire creative teams, of an atmosphere so tense it felt like the movie was collapsing under the weight of invisible pressure. And that's exactly what it was, invisible, yet crushing. Character at the center of this missing film had long been a fan favorite in comic lore, someone whose arrival in the Marvel Cinematic Universe had been teased so subtly over the past few phases that only the most observant fans caught on. He was someone complicated, morally gray, culturally powerful, and deeply layered. He wasn't the typical superhero with a punchline and a spandex suit. His story was dark, riddled with loss, betrayal, and power that bent toward destruction unless carefully reined in. When news broke years ago that Marvel was finally adapting this character, the fandom exploded with excitement. Casting predictions dominated YouTube videos. Concept art channels racked up millions of views. And then just like that, the update stopped. Not delayed, not paused, just gone. Internally, the situation was even messier. Our source, someone who worked on the film's early location, shoots under a temporary contract, described the tone on set as unstable. According to them, the script went through at least 9 major rewrites, not because of creative evolution, but because executives couldn't agree on what message the film was supposed to send. But when things got complicated, behind the scenes, when headlines began scrutinizing every word spoken by Marvel's writers, when certain fan groups began launching backlash campaigns, they got scared. And fear, as always, kills creativity. But there's more. In the past week, we received an anonymous file drop that included an early shooting schedule, a list of scene titles, and an internal memo discussing reshoots that were scheduled and never filmed. Among those scene titles was one that stood out: The Fall of the Gatekeeper. No further context. Just a name that suggested confrontation, revolution, and possibly the downfall of a key Marvel entity. Was it metaphorical? Was it literal? We don't know. But what we do know is this: Marvel never fully deletes. They shelve. They repurpose. They wait. Which means somewhere, locked away in a vault or on a studio hard drive, this story still exists. And maybe that's why they're scared. Because with enough fan pressure, with enough noise, with enough people asking the right questions on YouTube, TikTok, and Reddit, that story might still find its way out. And if it does, it won't just be another canceled film unearthed. It'll be a revelation. A story too bold to stay buried. A character too powerful to be forgotten. But what if someone is already trying to bring it back? What if someone inside Marvel is leaking these details, not to cause chaos, but to start a movement? Because just as things were reaching a boiling point online, we received a message. Not a rumor, not another anonymous tip, but a direct message from someone who claims to have worked on the final scene of the film. They say the footage still exists. They say it was complete. And they say it ends with a warning. The moment that message came through, everything shifted. Until that point, everything we'd uncovered was speculative, fractured, and floating in that uncertain space between truth and paranoia. But now there was a pulse, a direct line from someone who was there, in the room, during what they claimed was the last completed day of shooting before everything went silent. Their message wasn't long. No dramatic exposition. Just a few lines that hit like a gut punch. I was there when we wrapped the last scene. The footage wasn't destroyed. It's not just on a backup drive. It was duplicated. Quietly. I kept a copy. For a few hours, we debated whether this was just another hoax, riding the wave of Marvel fan desperation. But then the file came. No name, no metadata, just a short, silent video of what looked like a green screen stage with rubble props and a throne made of bent iron. A figure stood in front of it, hooked in shadows. We never saw his face, but the monologue, that voice, it wasn't just a scene. It was a challenge. A character breaking the fourth wall, speaking directly to the camera, to the audience. And what he said felt less like fiction and more like a warning. You built your world on illusions. And now you expect your heroes to save you from truths you won't even face. But you forgot I was never your hero. I was the consequence. Then the screen glitched and the file corrupted halfway through. But it was enough. Enough to know the film wasn't gone. And that someone didn't want it found. That was the moment we realized this wasn't just a lost Marvel movie. It was a buried confession. Because if that scene made it to the screen, it would unravel everything the studio had been building up for years. This wasn't about continuity anymore. It was about control. The deeper we went, the more disturbing it got. Multiple Reddit users came forward claiming their old comments about the canceled movie had been shadow banned or deleted. YouTubers received copyright strikes on analysis videos that only featured speculation and fan theories. A known insider hinted during a live stream that their NDA had been forcibly extended retroactively. And when asked about the mysterious project during a convention panel, a certain MSCU veteran looked visibly uncomfortable, dodging the question with a vague joke about multiverse madness taking too many wrong turns. But that smirk didn't reach their eyes. As we followed this thread, another subplot began to emerge, one involving a secondary character from the movie who was originally set to debut as part of a stealth crossover. Not a cameo. Not an Easter egg. A full-on arc that would connect this canceled film with a major upcoming Disney Plus series. This character, let's call them Signal, was described in internal memos as a disruptor, someone who could expose secrets across timelines, fracture false histories, and hold the MCU accountable. According to concept art leaked by a freelance designer, Signal's costume was laced with reflective surfaces designed to mirror the viewer at key moments. Symbolically, this character was truth incarnate. And when you consider Marvel's recent history of carefully curated PR and fan appeasement, one side wanted the story to confront real-world themes: oppression, systemic control, identity, while the other feared backlash and wanted a safer, more marketable version. This tug-of-war created a Frankenstein script, one that no director could comfortably bring to life. Even the actors, some of whom had already undergone months of physical training, grew frustrated. One rising star, who was set to make his MSCU debut in a breakout role, quietly dropped out citing schedule conflicts. But everyone behind the scenes knew it was a calculated exit from a sinking ship. What made things even stranger was the absence of official acknowledgement. Marvel didn't release a statement. Kevin Feige didn't drop any cryptic hints, like he often does during panels. The absence was louder than any denial, but the internet didn't forget. Hardcore MCU YouTubers began putting together video essays filled with timelines, overlaying cast interviews with trailer breakdowns to prove the movie had existed, that it was real, that it had been nearly ready to go. One of those videos, titled "The Cancelled Marvel Movie They Don't Want You to See," reached over 10 million views in a week. It forced the conversation into the mainstream. Suddenly, questions were being asked at Comic Cons, influencers were digging deeper, and Marvel's silence only made things worse. Behind closed doors, the decision to kill the project was tied to more than just content strategy. It involved corporate restructuring after the Disney board shuffled key positions. Some of the new faces brought with them different philosophies, prioritizing profitability over fan loyalty. There was talk that the character's story overlapped too closely with an upcoming Disney Plus series, and executives feared brand confusion. Others argued that the film didn't fit neatly within the multiverse narrative, which Marvel had heavily invested in. But the most chilling rumor was that the cancellation came after a last-minute test screening, where the reactions weren't just negative, they were panicked. Not because the movie was bad, but because it was too real. It held a mirror to power in a way that made certain executives nervous. It questioned the idea of who gets to be a hero and who gets branded as a villain. From the outside, Marvel's content machine kept moving. Deadpool and Wolverine updates surged online. The Fantastic Forecast reveal went viral. Trailers for Blade and Thunderbolts dominated YouTube trending pages. But beneath it all, fans noticed a conspicuous absence. YouTubers who once hyped the now cancelled project began avoiding it altogether, as if they'd been asked or warned not to mention it anymore. One creator, known for exclusive leaks and behind-the-scenes access, deleted all videos related to the cancelled film. No explanation, just wiped from existence. When viewers asked why, they were met with vague replies like legal reasons, or "I can't talk about it anymore." It only fueled the fire. Then came the leak. Not a script, not a trailer, but something more disturbing. A blurry, handheld recording of what looked like an internal presentation. The screen showed concept art of the main character standing in a shattered New York, flanked by two other Marvel icons who had never appeared together before. The image was shown for no more than 10 seconds before the camera cut away, but it was enough. Fans recognized the actors. They began connecting dots across films and series. The implication was clear. This movie wasn't just another solo project. It was a keystone one that could have changed everything. One that now, by being erased, left a gaping hole in the overarching narrative. As fans grew more relentless, digging through licensing reports and archival footage, more clues surfaced. An unused Lego set design. A foreign promotional banner that featured the film's original working title. A domain name purchased by Marvel's parent company and left to expire. Every fragment told the same story: this film was real, and they tried to erase it. And while some were content to accept its cancellation as a business decision, others saw it differently. They saw it as censorship, as betrayal, as the first sign that Marvel's creative freedom was being quietly strangled by corporate interference. And yet, one question remained: what was so dangerous about this movie? To understand that, you'd have to look beyond the MCU. You'd have to look into the world that inspired this character, his comic origins, yes, but also the real-world parallels that made him so powerful. He was born from protest, from resistance, from cultures that had long been misrepresented or ignored. His power didn't come from a lab accident or alien tech. It came from history, and that made his story too bold for comfort. In adapting him, Marvel faced a choice: soften his edges or embrace his fire. For a while, they leaned toward fire. But when things got complicated behind the scenes, when headlines began scrutinizing every word spoken by Marvel's writers, when certain fan groups began launching backlash campaigns, they got scared. And fear, as always, kills creativity. But there's more. In the past week, we received an anonymous file drop that included an early shooting schedule, a list of scene titles, and an internal memo discussing reshoots that were scheduled and never filmed. Among those scene titles was one that stood out: The Fall of the Gatekeeper. No further context, just a name that suggested confrontation, revolution, and possibly the downfall of a key Marvel entity. Was it metaphorical? Was it literal? We don't know. But what we do know is this: Marvel never fully deletes. They shelve. They repurpose. They wait. Which means somewhere, locked away in a vault or on a studio hard drive, this story still exists. And maybe that's why they're scared. Because with enough fan pressure, with enough noise, with enough people asking the right questions on YouTube, TikTok, and Reddit, that story might still find its way out. And if it does, it won't just be another cancelled film unearthed. It'll be a revelation. A story too bold to stay buried. A character too powerful to be forgotten. But what if someone is already trying to bring it back? What if someone inside Marvel is leaking these details, not to cause chaos, but to start a movement? Because just as things were reaching a boiling point online, we received a message. Not a rumor. Not another anonymous tip. But a direct message from someone who claims to have worked on the final scene of the film. They say the footage still exists. They say it was complete. And they say it ends with a warning. The moment that message came through, everything shifted. Until that point, everything we'd uncovered was speculative, fractured, and floating in that uncertain space between truth and paranoia. But now, there was a pulse, a direct line, from someone who was there, in the room, during what they claimed was the last completed day of shooting before everything went silent. Their message wasn't long. No dramatic exposition. Just a few lines that hit like a gut punch. I was there when we wrapped the last scene. The footage wasn't destroyed. It's not just on a backup drive. It was duplicated. Quietly, I kept a copy. For a few hours, we debated whether this was just another hoax, riding the wave of Marvel fan desperation. But then the file came. No name, no metadata, just a short, silent video of what looked like a green screen stage with rubble props and a throne made of bent iron. A figure stood in front of it, cloaked in shadows. We never saw his face. But the monologue, that voice, it wasn't just a scene. It was a challenge. A character breaking the fourth wall. Speaking directly to the camera. To the audience. And what he said felt less like fiction and more like a warning. You built your world on illusions. And now you expect your heroes to save you from truths you won't even face. But you forgot I was never your hero. I was the consequence. Then the screen glitched, and the file corrupted halfway through. But it was enough. Enough to know the film wasn't gone. And that someone didn't want it found. That was the moment we realized this wasn't just a lost Marvel movie. It was a buried confession. Because if that scene made it to the screen, it would unravel everything the studio had been building up for years. This wasn't about continuity anymore. It was about control. The deeper we went, the more disturbing it got. Multiple Reddit users came forward, claiming their old comments about the canceled movie had been shadow banned or deleted. YouTubers received copyright strikes on analysis videos that only featured speculation and fan theories. A known insider hinted during a live stream that their NDA had been forcibly extended retroactively. And when asked about the mysterious project during a convention panel, a certain MCU veteran looked visibly uncomfortable, dodging the question with a vague joke about multiverse madness taking too many wrong turns. But that smirk didn't reach their eyes. As we followed this thread, another subplot began to emerge, one involving a secondary character from the movie who was originally set to debut as part of a stealth crossover. Not a cameo. Not an Easter egg. A full-on arc that would connect this canceled film with a major upcoming Disney Plus series. This character, let's call them Signal, was described in internal memos as a disruptor, someone who could expose secrets across timelines, fracture false histories, and hold the MCU accountable. According to concept art leaked by a freelance designer, Signal's costume was laced with reflective surfaces, designed to mirror the viewer at key moments. Symbolically, this character was truth incarnate. And when you consider Marvel's recent history of carefully curated PR and fan appeasement, the inclusion of such a character, one who forces the audience to confront uncomfortable realities, wasn't just risky. It was revolutionary. And that's when the real twist hit. The original director of the canceled film wasn't just some newcomer or random indie hire. It was a returning MCU director, someone with enough clout to push boundaries. Someone who had already proven their ability to blend social commentary with superhero storytelling. We're talking about a filmmaker known for subverting genre tropes and using spectacle as a vessel for uncomfortable truths. And now we were hearing, through back-channel interviews and semi-verified leaks, that they hadn't walked away. They'd been pushed. Reports described closed-door meetings, where creative clashes turned into shouting matches. Producers accused the director of weaponizing fan expectations, while the director accused them of gutting the narrative to protect the brand. The final straw came during a reshoot discussion, when the studio insisted on rewriting the third act to introduce a multiverse escape hatch, essentially undoing the consequences of the character's actions. The director refused. And that's when everything stopped. But the studio didn't just shelve the film. They tried to rewrite history. Internal documents show that meetings were held to discuss how to reintegrate key assets from the scrapped project into future MCU entries without acknowledging the canceled movie. Plan was to recast, reframe, and reuse, transforming the film's most powerful moments into safer, less controversial subplots. This wasn't creative evolution. This was erasure. And it was all happening behind the glossy curtain of teaser drops, trailer reactions, and red carpet smiles. Most fans had no idea, and those who did were beginning to piece together a bigger picture. Marvel wasn't just facing a creative drought. They were fighting a silent civil war. One of the most haunting moments came from a podcast interview with a now retired Marvel producer. When asked about the unconfirmed project, they went quiet for a beat, then said something that gave us chills. There was one story that scared them. Not because it was violent or graphic, but because it made the audience feel complicit. That's the kind of story that doesn't test well. That line stuck with us. Because what kind of superhero film makes the audience complicit? What narrative forces viewers to examine themselves, rather than simply cheering for CGI battles and post-credit setups? Then came another unexpected layer. A former MCU screenwriter who had been let go during early development revealed that the original plot centered around a government-run program designed to control powered individuals through media manipulation. The twist? Most of the heroes we'd known and loved were unwitting participants in a broader system of narrative engineering. The main character, now dubbed the Rogue by fans, was a former operative who had defected after discovering the truth. Their arc wasn't about saving the world. It was about exposing it. This would have flipped the MCU on its head. It would have retroactively reframed entire phases. And more importantly, it would have challenged the audience to question the very foundation of what it means to be a hero. Now, here's where things get even darker. We obtained a redacted call sheet that lists an unannounced post-credits scene shot at a private location weeks after the main shoot was canceled. Only 3 actors were involved. 2 were recognizable Marvel stars. The third was listed under a codename Vox, the same name that appeared in early trademark filings that were never officially published. According to storyboard notes, this scene featured Vox confronting a familiar character about the timeline manipulation revealed in the main film. The final line in the script read, "They know now, and they're watching. We don't know who they are." But based on everything we've seen, we're starting to suspect that Vox isn't a villain in the traditional sense. Vox is a symbol, a consequence, maybe even a meta-commentary on the power of storytelling itself. As we combed through every scrap of information, we began to notice something even more unsettling. Patterns, symbols, recurring numbers and phrases that seemed to appear across multiple leaks. One phrase kept showing up in emails, watermarked images, and even production notes. The archive is not closed. At first, we thought it was just an internal slogan. But then, a fan pointed out that the same phrase appeared in a background screen in an entirely different Marvel property released last year, hidden in code, only visible when zoomed in. That's when it hit us. Someone inside Marvel was leaving a breadcrumb trail. Not just to expose the canceled movie, but to signal that its story wasn't over. That somewhere, somehow, the archive still exists. And it's waiting to be reopened. That brings us to now. The fan base is divided. Some believe this is all part of a viral marketing campaign that Marvel is playing 4D chess, and we're all just pawns in a grand narrative rollout. Others believe the studio is panicking, trying to control a narrative that's slipping through their fingers. And then there's a third group, the one growing louder by the day, who believe that the canceled movie is the key to something much bigger. That if we keep digging, keep questioning, keep pressing, we might uncover not just a film, but a truth too powerful to stay buried. And maybe that's exactly what they're afraid of. Because just as we were preparing this video, we received a new email. No subject, no text, just one attachment. The filler name? Endgame. Wasn't then. Poor. There was something ominous about how quiet the room became when the file finally loaded. Endgame wasn't themed. M4 flickered to life with no opening credits, No studio watermark, no stylized title card announcing it as a sanctioned piece of Marvel content. Just a grainy flicker of static and a timestamp in the lower left corner, formatted in a way none of us had seen before. At first glance, it looked like raw, behind-the-scenes footage. No music, no visual effects, just a series of handheld camera shots showing a production crew in motion, focused on something we couldn't yet see. A voice familiar, yet distorted, narrated over the footage, not like a character, but like someone sending a distress signal. This was never supposed to be seen. But if you're watching this, it means someone left the door open, and you stepped into a truth we were all warned to bury. At that moment, the screen changed. What appeared next was beyond any theory we had floated, beyond any speculation tossed around on Reddit threads or fan podcasts. It wasn't just a deleted scene. It was a culmination, something that looked and felt like a third-act revelation shot entirely in secret. The same hooded character from the first leaked clip appeared again, this time unmasked. And here's the catch: it wasn't an actor we recognized from any Marvel movie. It was someone we all knew in real life. A real person. A real public figure who had been involved with Marvel from the shadows for years, not as a performer, but as an architect. A behind-the-scenes executive who had been in the inner circle long before the first Avengers assembled. And now, he was breaking character, or perhaps finally stepping into one. The speech was chilling. You thought the multiverse was the story. You thought variants and timelines were our boldest idea. But that was never the real illusion. The real trick was convincing you that your world wasn't part of ours. As those words played, the video transitioned to a split screen of Marvel films and real news footage shots of protest movements, government censorship, surveillance technology interwoven with MCU-style footage of characters trying to fix reality. It was subtle, but the message was unmistakable. The canceled film wasn't just about fictional accountability. It was a mirror held up to our world. And someone at the top had decided that was too dangerous to share. More clips followed. A confrontation scene between Signal and the Rogue, revealing that Signal's ability wasn't just to reflect people, it was to extract memory and truth, using light and time. In one sequence, Signal showed the Rogue a recording of a Marvel board meeting, fictionalized yet uncannily close to reality, where decisions weren't made about stories, but about what ideas the public was ready to accept. This scene broke the fourth wall so thoroughly, it shattered the boundaries between entertainment and exposure. Characters spoke not as heroes or villains, but as metaphors for media responsibility, corporate control, and personal accountability. It was the most unfiltered, unflinching commentary Marvel had ever scripted, and they had hidden it. The final arc of the footage revealed the real conflict. It wasn't about saving the multiverse. It was about restoring the archive. Signal, the Rogue, and Vox were all fractured remnants of a forgotten truth, a narrative timeline, erased not by cosmic beings or secret wars, but by the studio itself. And the archive? It wasn't just a metaphorical vault. It was a literal server off-grid, protected, containing not only the canceled movie, but alternate versions of several Marvel entries. Cuts where the storylines went darker, truer, more self-aware. It explained the glitches, the leaks, the whispers of scripts that never saw the light of day. Someone had built an offshoot reality, and then someone else had buried it. Just when we thought we had reached the end of the footage, it happened. The unexpected twist we never saw coming. The hooded character, now confirmed, as the former creative lead stared into the camera one final time and said, "This isn't the last Marvel movie they canceled. It was the first." And in that moment, the file cut to black. No credits. No outro. Just silence. But as we froze in disbelief, a new file auto-downloaded. This time, no tricks. A folder labeled Reintegration Protocol. Inside were scripts, dozens of them, outlines, production memos, casting notices, entire frameworks for projects never greenlit. Some connected to known properties, others completely unfamiliar. A trilogy centered around a hidden hero who could bend perception itself. A team-up film that framed the Avengers as villains from a dystopian future. A series of Disney Plus shorts that traced the origins of every Infinity Stone back to morally gray choices made by flawed beings. And sprinkled among them email threads, real names, real disagreements, real decisions to cut entire arcs because they were too reflective of the audience's complicity. We realized then that the canceled film had only scratched the surface. What had been stopped wasn't a single movie. It was a movement within the studio. A wave of creatives pushing the boundaries of what superhero storytelling could be. And in the process, they'd uncovered something terrifying. The truth that fans didn't just want heroes, they wanted absolution. And the studio couldn't afford to give them that. In the days that followed our upload, the internet caught fire. Reactions ranged from disbelief to full-blown investigation. Hashtags like Marvel Vault, Signal Exposed, and Archive Eyes Closed began trending on YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok. YouTubers posted frame-by-frame breakdowns. Journalists reached out for interviews, and conspiracy theorists added the story to their web of corporate manipulation theories. Some called it performance art. Others, a whistleblower stunt disguised as entertainment. But one thing was clear: the audience was listening. They wanted more. And they were no longer content with the safe, shiny version of their favorite universe. Marvel's response was carefully measured. A vague tweet about respecting creative diversity, followed by the announcement of a new miniseries unrelated to any of the characters mentioned. But they couldn't bury it this time. Too many people had seen the footage. Too many voices were speaking out. Former employees came forward. Archived blog posts reemerged. And slowly, the truth seeped out from behind the PR curtain. In the final days of the backlash, something extraordinary happened. One of the subplots we thought had been completely fictional, a Disney Plus crossover hinted at in the canceled film, actually began production under a new title, with new leads, but the same theme. Quietly, subtly, Marvel was reintegrating the storylines. Not as they were, but as shadows of their former selves. The archive was being reopened not officially, but in pieces, in whispers, in reframed narratives that might finally allow audiences to see themselves, not just as fans, but as participants. And that, in the end, was the real victory. Because storytelling, at its core, is a mirror. And sometimes the hardest stories to tell are the ones that show us who we've become. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of inner strength and resilience. Until next time, stay strong, stay brave, and never forget your worth.